stepped into a suitcase she didn't recognize. The expensive leather gleamed under the afternoon light, brand new, purchased without her knowledge. He wasn't even looking at her. After 7 years of marriage, he packed his belongings like she was invisible, like she had already disappeared from his life. "When did you buy that suitcase?" Her voice came out smaller than she intended. "Last week." He didn't stop folding. "I needed something professional for business trips." But this wasn't a business trip. The closet was half empty. His toiletries were gone from the bathroom. The photo of their wedding day that usually sat on his nightstand was face down in the trash can. "Please look at me." Diane's hands trembled at her sides. "Please just tell me what's happening." He finally turned around. His face held no warmth, no regret, nothing but cold determination. This was the man who had promised to love her forever, who had held her through her mother's funeral, who had kissed her goodbye that very morning. Except he hadn't kissed her that morning. She realized he hadn't touched her in weeks. "I'm leaving." 2 words. Flat. Final. "Leaving? What do you mean leaving? Talk to me. Whatever's wrong, we can fix it." "There's nothing to fix, Diane. I don't want to be married anymore." He zipped the suitcase closed with swift efficiency. "I started my new job today. New position, new salary, new life. I need to be with someone who fits that life." The words hit her like physical blows. "Someone who fits? I'm your wife. I supported you through everything. The late nights studying for your certifications, the job rejections, and I appreciate that." His tone was the one someone might use with a helpful stranger. "But I've outgrown this. Outgrown us. I need someone on my level now." "Your level?" Diane felt her legs weakening. "What does that even mean?" He pulled out his phone and showed her a picture. A woman in an expensive suit, perfectly styled hair, brilliant white smile. Someone who looked like she belonged in boardrooms and country clubs. "Her name is Nicole. She works in my department. She understands my ambitions. She comes from the right background, knows the right people." He pocketed his phone. "We've been seeing each other for 4 months. 4 months. While Diane had been planning their anniversary dinner. While she'd been excited about his job interviews. While she'd been his wife. 4 months. She could barely breathe. "You've been lying to me for 4 months?" "I wasn't lying. I just wasn't ready to have this conversation until everything was in place." He grabbed the suitcase handle. "My lawyer will send over the divorce papers. You can keep the apartment until the lease is up. That gives you 2 months to find something you can afford on your salary." "Something I can afford? This is our home. We chose this together. And now we're unchoosing it." He walked past her without another glance. "I've already moved my important documents and opened my own bank account. Don't try to take anything that isn't yours." Diane followed him into the living room, desperate, confused, her world shattering with each step he took toward the door. "Please don't do this. If you're unhappy, we can go to counseling. We can work on whatever's wrong." He turned at the door, and for just a moment, she thought she saw something in his eyes. Hesitation, maybe. Doubt. But it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "Goodbye, Diane. Sign the papers when they arrive. Don't make this difficult." He walked out and closed the door behind him with a soft click that sounded like the end of everything. Diane stood alone in the apartment they had furnished together, decorated together, called home together. The silence pressed against her ears. Her phone buzzed with a text from him. "Forgot to mention. I'm blocking your number. All communication goes through lawyers now." She sank onto the couch, still wearing the scrubs from her shift at the hospital where she worked as a nurse. She had come home early, excited to surprise him on his first day at the new job. She'd bought his favorite dinner, planned to celebrate his success. The takeout container sat on the kitchen counter, cold and forgotten. How had she missed this? 4 months of lies. 4 months of planning his exit. 4 months of pretending to be her husband while building a new life without her. Her phone buzzed again. Not him, he'd already blocked her. It was her bank app. A notification that their joint checking account had been closed. She logged in frantically to find he'd withdrawn everything except $200. 7 years of combined savings gone. Money she'd contributed from every paycheck vanished. Diane looked around their apartment, her apartment now for 2 more months, and felt the full weight of betrayal settle into her bones. He hadn't just left her. He'd planned it, calculated it, stripped everything away in one devastating blow. New job, new woman, new life. She was just an obstacle he'd removed from his path to success. The sun set outside the window, painting the room in darkening shadows. Diane sat motionless on the couch, holding her phone, staring at the door he'd walked through. The life she'd known had ended. She just didn't know yet that a completely different life was about to begin. 3 days passed in a fog. Diane called in sick to work, unable to face anyone, unable to explain why her eyes were constantly red, why her hands shook whenever she tried to do simple tasks. She tried calling him from her work phone, from borrowed phones, but every number was blocked. His social media accounts had vanished, at least to her. He'd removed every trace of her from his digital life. The divorce papers arrived by courier on the 3rd day. Diane forced herself to read through them. He wanted the divorce finalized within 60 days. He wanted a clean split with no spousal support. He claimed their marriage had been irretrievably broken for over a year. A lie. 6 months ago they'd been talking about starting a family. She was sitting at the kitchen table, the papers spread in front of her, when her phone rang. Unknown international number. Normally she wouldn't answer, but in her current state she didn't care about spam calls or scammers. Hello? Is this Mrs. Diane Patterson? A crisp British accent, professional, formal. Yes. Who is this? My name is Harold Pemberton. I'm calling from Pemberton, Chase and Associates in Geneva, Switzerland. I'm sorry to disturb you, but this matter requires immediate attention. Diane's stomach dropped. Switzerland? What could possibly connect her to Switzerland? I think you have the wrong person. You are Diane Patterson, maiden name Diane Roberts, born in Atlanta, Georgia, correct? Yes, but... And your mother's sister was Eleanor Roberts Michaels? The name struck her like lightning. Aunt Eleanor. Her mother's older sister who had left America 30 years ago after a family dispute Diane never fully understood. Her mother had mentioned Eleanor occasionally, always with sadness, but they'd lost contact decades ago. Yes. Eleanor was my aunt. But we never spoke. I haven't seen her since I was a baby. I'm sorry to inform you that Mrs. Eleanor Roberts Michaels passed away 6 weeks ago in Geneva. Mr. Pemberton's voice softened. Her estate has been in probate, and you are listed as her sole surviving heir. Diane's hand tightened on the phone. Heir? I don't understand. We weren't close. I barely knew her. According to her will, that was her greatest regret. The family disagreement that caused the separation troubled her deeply. She left extensive letters explaining her wishes. Papers rustled on his end. Mrs. Patterson, I need you to understand the gravity of this situation. Your aunt's estate is substantial. How substantial? The total liquid assets, property holdings, and investment portfolios amount to approximately $800 million. The kitchen tilted. Diane gripped the table edge. What did you say? $800 million, Mrs. Patterson. Your aunt was an extremely successful venture capitalist. She made several early investments in technology companies that proved extraordinarily profitable. He paused. I understand this is shocking news, especially combined with a death notification. Do you need a moment? 800, that's not possible. That can't be real. I assure you it's quite real. I'm emailing you documentation now, including copies of the will, estate valuations, and identity verification requirements. Given the amount involved, we'll need you to travel to Geneva to finalize everything. We can arrange first-class travel and accommodation. Diane's laptop was still open on the table. The email arrived as he spoke. She clicked through attachments with shaking hands. Official letterhead. Legal documents. Bank statements with numbers that made her dizzy. Mr. Pemberton, I need to think. This is too much. My husband just left me 3 days ago. I'm about to be divorced. I can't process this right now. I understand, Mrs. Patterson. However, time is somewhat critical. There are tax implications and legal windows we need to meet. Also, he hesitated. I must stress the importance of confidentiality. An estate of this size will attract attention. Until everything is finalized and proper security measures are in place, I strongly advise telling no one about this inheritance. Not friends, not family, not even your husband. Soon-to-be ex-husband, Diane corrected bitterly. And trust me, he's the last person I'd tell. Good. That's very wise. Now, I know this is overwhelming, but I need you to understand something important. His voice took on a more serious tone. Your aunt left you letters. She wanted you to know that she followed your life from a distance. She knew about your mother's death. She knew you'd become a nurse. She was proud of you. She also left specific instructions that this money should help you build the life you deserve, free from anyone who doesn't value you properly. Tears suddenly filled Diane's eyes. A woman she'd never known had cared about her from thousands of miles away, had watched over her, had left her a fortune specifically to ensure she'd be safe and independent. When do you need me in Geneva? As soon as possible. Shall we arrange travel for next week? That gives you time to settle immediate affairs and prepare for absence from work. Next week is fine. Diane looked at the divorce papers on the table. Mr. Pemberton, my husband doesn't know about this. The divorce papers specify our assets, which are basically nothing. If I inherit this money before the divorce is final. Say no more, Mrs. Patterson. I've handled many such situations. If you retain proper legal counsel, your inheritance can be protected as separate property, especially since it comes after the marriage has legally dissolved. In fact, since your husband initiated the divorce, the timing works strongly in your favor. So he can't touch this money? Not if we do this correctly. And Mrs. Patterson? Your aunt's letter specifically mentioned that her money should never benefit anyone who abandoned or betrayed you. She was very clear on that point. Diane felt something shift inside her chest. Not quite hope, not yet, but something harder and stronger. Determination maybe. Or the very beginning of a plan. Mr. Pemberton, I'll need a divorce lawyer. A very good one. I can recommend several excellent attorneys who specialize in high net worth divorces. They're discreet and aggressive when necessary. Aggressive sounds perfect. Diane pulled the divorce papers closer. Let's make sure everything is done correctly. Legal. Airtight. Excellent approach, Mrs. Patterson. I'll email you the contact information immediately. And may I say, I think your aunt would be very pleased with how you're handling this. After they ended the call, Diane sat in the silent kitchen, staring at the divorce papers her husband had sent. Papers that assumed she was helpless, broke, dependent. Papers that gave her nothing because he believed she had nothing. He had no idea what was coming. For the first time in 3 days, Diane felt her spine straighten. She opened her laptop and started reading through her aunt's will. Page after page of investments, properties, charitable foundations. And letters. Dozens of letters Eleanor had written but never sent, chronicling Diane's life from a distance, expressing regret about the family separation, explaining that she'd always intended to reconnect but kept waiting for the right moment. The right moment had never come for Eleanor. But for Diane, the moment was now. She picked up her phone and called her workplace. Hi, this is Diane Patterson. I need to request 2 weeks of leave. Family emergency. Yes, I have the time available. Thank you. Next, she called the first attorney on Mr. Pemberton's list. The firm answered immediately, even though it was nearly 9 p.m. I need a divorce lawyer, Diane said. Someone who specializes in protecting assets. Someone who can move quickly. And someone who doesn't lose. Let me connect you with Patricia Okoye. She's our lead divorce attorney. One moment, please. While she waited on hold, Diane's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. She changed her settings to allow messages from non-contacts, just in case something important came through. The message made her blood run cold. Hey, heard through friends you and your husband split. Just wanted to check you're doing okay financially. Happy to help if you need anything. Nicole. The mistress. Reaching out with fake concern. Diane deleted the message without responding. A woman's confident voice came on the line. This is Patricia Okoye. I understand you need representation in a divorce matter? Yes. And there are some complications we need to discuss. Privately. Soon. I have an opening tomorrow morning at 8. Can you make that? I'll be there. Good. Bring all documentation related to your marriage and your husband. Every bank statement, every text message, every email. Everything. I will. One more thing, Mrs. Patterson. My assistant notes that you were referred by Pemberton, Chase, and Associates. Is there an inheritance involved? Yes. Substantial? Very. Does your husband know? Not yet. Patricia's laugh was sharp and satisfied. Oh, this is going to be interesting. See you tomorrow morning, Mrs. Patterson. And don't worry, he won't know what hit him. Diane ended the call and allowed herself a small, grim smile. 3 days ago, her husband had walked out believing he'd left her with nothing. He'd calculated his exit perfectly, or so he thought. New job, new woman, clean break from the wife who no longer fit his upgraded life. He had no idea she'd just inherited $800 million. And he was never going to find out until it was far too late to matter. Diane sat in Patricia Okoye's office, a space that radiated competence and power. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. Legal books lined mahogany shelves. Patricia herself was a tall woman in her late 40s with sharp eyes and an even sharper mind. Your husband is an idiot. Patricia tossed the divorce papers onto her desk with disgust. He filed for divorce citing irreconcilable differences, claimed no fault on either side, agreed to a clean split of marital assets, which amount to almost nothing, and waived spousal support. He basically handed you a gift. A gift? Diane frowned. He's established that this marriage is over by his own choice and his own filing. Any assets you acquire after the filing date, which includes your inheritance, are completely separate property. He has no claim whatsoever. Patricia leaned back in her chair. Even better, he withdrew all the money from your joint account and closed it without your consent. That's a violation of marital asset protection laws. We can file a motion to recover your portion with penalties. I don't care about that money. Diane's voice was steady. It was a few $1,000s. I care about making sure he can never touch my inheritance. He won't. We'll have this divorce finalized before he even knows you have money. Speaking of which, Patricia pulled out a thick folder. I did some preliminary research on your husband. He works at Stellar Financial Group now, correct? Yes. That's the new job he left me for. And his girlfriend, Nicole Winters, works there too. She's a senior analyst. They've been seen together at company events. Patricia slid photos across the desk. Printed screenshots from social media. Her husband and Nicole at a rooftop bar, at a corporate dinner, walking into an expensive restaurant. Diane's chest tightened, but she forced herself to look at each image. Where did you get these? I have an investigator on retainer. Good man, very thorough. He started digging the moment you hired me. Patricia pulled out more documents. Here's where it gets interesting. Your husband opened 3 credit cards in the last 6 months. All using your joint address. All with statements being sent to a P.O. box you didn't know about. He opened credit cards? In his name? Technically not illegal since you were married at the time. But look at the charges. Patricia highlighted several entries. Jewelry store, $5,000. Luxury hotel weekend stay, $2,000. Designer clothing boutique, $3,000. All while he was telling you money was tight and you couldn't afford a vacation. Diane felt sick. He was spending our money on her. Your money. You contributed to the household finances. These purchases were made on credit cards that will be considered marital debt. Normally, you'd be responsible for half. But we're going to prove he incurred this debt through an affair, which gives us grounds to make him responsible for all of it. Can we really do that? With the right judge and the right evidence? Absolutely. Patricia pulled out another document. Now, about your inheritance. When do you fly to Geneva? In 5 days. Mr. Pemberton has everything arranged. Good. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to accept your husband's divorce terms exactly as he submitted them. Clean split, no spousal support, quick resolution. We file our response immediately with no modifications. Won't that seem suspicious? That I'm agreeing so easily? It'll seem like you're a reasonable person who wants this nightmare over with. Patricia smiled coldly. Men like your husband never expect their wives to have any power. He thinks you'll fight, cry, beg for support. When you don't, he'll think he's even smarter than he believed. He'll never suspect you have resources. And when do we tell him about the inheritance? Never. Why would we? By the time the divorce is final, that money is yours. Completely separate. He filed, he set the terms, he established this was over. The inheritance came after the dissolution of the marriage. It's none of his business. Diane felt a weight lifting. So he just never knows? Not from us. Though I suspect he'll find out eventually. $800 million is hard to hide long-term. But by then you'll be legally divorced and fully protected. Patricia's expression hardened. Here's what you need to understand, Diane. Your husband didn't just betray you emotionally. He systematically planned to leave you in the worst position possible. He drained accounts. He ran up debt for his affair. He terminated your insurance coverage. Did you know that? What? You're no longer on his health insurance through his new job. He listed himself as single. Your coverage ended the day he started working there. Patricia slid the documentation across the desk. He didn't tell you because he wanted you to find out during a medical emergency. He wanted you desperate. Rage, hot and pure, flooded through Diane's body. How could anyone be this cruel? Because he doesn't see you as a person anymore. You're an obstacle he removed. A chapter he closed. He's probably telling Nicole stories about how you held him back, how you never supported his dreams. Patricia's voice softened slightly. I know this hurts, but use that pain. Let it motivate you. We're going to handle this perfectly, legally, and by the time we're done, he'll regret every choice he made. They spent the next 2 hours going through every detail of Diane's marriage. Of everything while Diane answered hundreds of questions. One last thing, Patricia said as they wrapped up. Don't communicate with him at all. Don't respond to his texts or calls. Don't contact Nicole. Don't tell friends what's happening with your inheritance. The fewer people who know, the safer you are. I understand. And if he reaches out to you, Patricia paused. When men like this sense they've lost control, they sometimes try to reconnect. If he contacts you, document everything but don't engage. Forward it all to me immediately. Why would he want to reconnect? He made it very clear I don't fit his new life. Money has a way of changing people's memories. Just be prepared. Diane left the office feeling stronger than she had in days. She had a plan. She had protection. She had a lawyer who actually believed her and wanted to help. She spent the next 3 days preparing for her trip to Geneva. She arranged extended leave from work, claiming a family emergency. She packed carefully, thinking about the life-changing journey ahead. And she avoided all attempts at contact from mutual friends who wanted to know what happened to her marriage. On the 4th day, her doorbell rang. She checked the peephole and froze. Her husband stood in the hallway holding flowers. Diane's hand hovered over the doorknob. Everything in her wanted to pretend she wasn't home, to hide like a wounded animal. But Patricia's voice echoed in her mind, document everything. She pulled out her phone, opened the recording app, and then opened the door. You look good. New suit, expensive haircut, confident smile. The smile faltered when he saw her expression. Diane, I'm glad you're home. What are you doing here? She kept the door partially closed, her body blocking entry. I wanted to talk. Can I come in? No. Come on, don't be like that. I brought your favorite flowers. He held out the bouquet. Roses and lilies. They used to be her favorite. Now they just looked like manipulation. I don't want flowers. I want you to leave. Just give me 5 minutes. Please. I've been thinking about us. There is no us. You made that very clear when you packed your bags and walked out. You made it even clearer when you blocked my number and cleaned out our bank account. I know. I handled that badly. He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture she'd once found endearing. I was stressed about the new job. I panicked. But I've had time to think and I realized I made a huge mistake. Diane felt her heartbeat accelerate, but she kept her voice level. A mistake. Yes, a huge mistake. Nicole, she's not right for me. She's cold, calculating. Not like you. You're warm and caring and genuine. He stepped closer. I miss you. I miss us. I want to come home. The words she'd been desperate to hear 4 days ago now sounded hollow and false. You want to come home? Yes. We can forget the divorce papers. Start over. Go to counseling like you suggested. I know I hurt you, but we can fix this. When did you decide this? When did you suddenly miss me so much? I've been miserable since I left. I just didn't want to admit I was wrong. He tried to look sincere. Please, Diane. Give me another chance. She knew she should slam the door. But she needed to understand something first. How did you hear? Hear what? About my money. His face went carefully blank. What money? What are you talking about? Someone told you. Who was it? Nobody told me anything. I don't know what you mean. But his eyes shifted just for a moment. Guilt. Calculation. Get away from my door. Diane's voice turned to ice. Get away from me. The divorce is happening. You wanted it, you filed for it, and now you're getting it. Diane, wait. No. You made your choice. You said I didn't fit your new life. You took someone else to company events while we were still married. You spent thousands of dollars on her while telling me we couldn't afford basic things. You closed our bank account and left me with nothing. You removed me from your insurance. She watched his face pale as he realized how much she knew. You didn't make a mistake. You made a plan. And now you're going to live with the consequences. I can explain all of that. I don't want explanations. I want you gone. You're going to regret this. The mask slipped. The kind, apologetic expression vanished, replaced by cold anger. You think you can make it without me? You're a nurse. You make barely enough to survive. You need me. I really don't. Whatever you think you have coming, whatever someone told you about, it's not real. People lie. Get-rich-quick schemes don't work. He was grasping now, desperate. I'm your best option. Don't be stupid. Goodbye. Diane closed the door and locked it. He pounded on it 3 times. Diane? Open this door. We need to talk about this. She pulled out her phone and called building security. Hi, this is Diane Patterson in Unit 4B. My ex-husband is harassing me at my door. Can you send someone to escort him out? Yes, he's being aggressive. Thank you. The pounding stopped. She heard his footsteps retreating down the hall, fast and angry. Diane stood with her back against the door, shaking. Not from fear or regret. From rage. He'd heard somehow. Maybe a lucky guess. Maybe someone at the law firm leaked something. It didn't matter. What mattered was that he'd shown his true self completely now. She opened her phone and forwarded the recording to Patricia with a message. He came to my apartment trying to reconcile. Started getting angry when I refused. Claimed he didn't know about money but clearly does. How do I protect myself? Patricia's response came in under a minute. Perfect. This recording proves he's motivated by finances, not love. Keep documenting. And get to Geneva immediately. The sooner that money is legally yours and protected, the better. I'm filing a restraining order request based on his aggressive behavior. He won't be able to contact you again. Diane looked at her suitcase, packed and ready by the door. Her flight left tomorrow morning. In 72 hours, she'd be in Geneva, finalizing an inheritance that would change her life forever. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You can't hide money in a divorce. I have lawyers too. We'll see you in court. She screenshotted it and forwarded it to Patricia without responding. Another text. Nicole says you're pathetic. Trying to trap me with fake inheritance stories. It won't work. Screenshot. Forward. Block. The text kept coming from different numbers. Threats. Accusations. Finally, desperate pleas for her to be reasonable. Diane blocked each one methodically and sent every screenshot to her lawyer. Tomorrow she'd fly to Geneva. Tomorrow she'd start building a new life. But tonight, she let herself feel the full weight of what her marriage had really been. A lie from a man who'd never truly valued her. The flowers he'd brought sat in the hallway outside her door where he'd dropped them. Diane watched through the peephole as a neighbor picked them up, shrugged, and carried them away. Perfect metaphor. Beautiful on the outside. Rotten underneath. And ultimately garbage. The flight to Geneva felt surreal. First class, a luxury Diane had never experienced, with seats that reclined into full beds and food that tasted like art. She couldn't stop thinking about the difference between this trip and her honeymoon 7 years ago. Mr. Pemberton met her at the airport, a distinguished man in his 60s with kind eyes and professional warmth. How was your flight? Overwhelming. All of this is overwhelming. Understandable. Let's get you settled at your hotel, and we'll meet tomorrow morning to begin the legal process. He guided her to a sleek black car. How are you managing emotionally? I know this coincides with your marital difficulties. My soon-to-be ex-husband showed up at my apartment trying to reconcile. He somehow heard about the inheritance. Mr. Pemberton's expression hardened. That's concerning. How much does he know? I'm not sure. But he knows enough to want back into my life. After making it very clear I was beneath him. We'll need to move quickly then. Your aunt specifically structured her estate to be protected from situations like this. She dealt with fortune hunters herself and wanted to ensure you'd never be victimized by them. The hotel was beautiful, a historic building with modern luxury. Diane's suite overlooked Lake Geneva, the water glittering under afternoon sun. She barely had time to absorb it before her phone rang. Patricia. Tell me you're in Geneva, Patricia said without preamble. Just arrived. Good. Because your husband filed a motion this morning claiming you're hiding assets. He's demanding full financial disclosure and wants the divorce put on hold until all potential assets are accounted for. Diane sank onto the suite's sofa. Can he do that? He can try. But we're going to destroy his motion. First, he has no evidence you have any assets to hide. He's fishing. Second, he initiated the divorce with his own terms claiming a clean split. He can't suddenly demand different terms because he changed his mind. Third, any inheritance you receive after the dissolution date is separate property. The judge is going to laugh him out of court. When's the hearing? 2 weeks. I need you back in the States for it. Can you finalize everything in Geneva by then? Mr. Pemberton says we can move quickly. I'll make it work. Perfect. One more thing. I've been digging into Nicole. She's got a history. This isn't her first relationship with a married co-worker. 2 years ago, she was involved with a vice president at her previous company. He left his wife, gave Nicole an expensive ring, then Nicole dumped him when he took a pay cut during corporate restructuring. She's a professional homewrecker? More like a professional opportunist. She targets men on the rise, encourages them to leave their wives, benefits from their increased income and status, then moves on when something better appears. Patricia's disgust was evident. Your husband thinks he's special. He thinks she loves him for who he is. He has no idea he's just her current investment. Does he know about her history? Absolutely not. Men like him never believe they're being used. They're too arrogant. Patricia paused. Do you want me to tell him? No. Let him find out the hard way. Excellent instinct. The more he invests in her, the harder he'll fall when she inevitably leaves. Patricia's voice brightened. Oh, and one more delicious detail. Nicole just leased a penthouse apartment. Guess whose credit report she used to qualify? Please tell me she didn't. Oh, she did. Your husband co-signed the lease. He's on the hook for $3,600 a month. For 2 years. With his salary, that's going to sting. Diane couldn't help a bitter laugh. He told me we couldn't afford a nicer place. He told you that because he was saving for her. But don't worry. In 2 weeks, we'll make sure the judge knows every detail of his financial mismanagement. Speaking of which, forward me any communication from him immediately. His desperation is helping our case. After they ended the call, Diane sat staring at the lake view. Somewhere across the ocean, her husband was panicking, filing motions, trying to control a situation that had already escaped his grasp. Somewhere in the city, Nicole was settling into an expensive apartment he was paying for, probably already planning her exit strategy. And here, in Geneva, Diane was about to inherit $800 million. The next morning, Mr. Pemberton walked her through the estate documents in his firm's elegant conference room. Another lawyer joined them, a sharp-eyed woman named Catherine Rousseau who specialized in international asset protection. Your aunt was brilliant in her planning, Catherine explained, spreading documents across the table. She set up multiple trusts, each with specific purposes and protections. The primary trust contains the bulk of the assets and is irrevocable. Once you're the beneficiary, no one can challenge it or claim rights to it. Not even through marriage? Diane asked. Especially not through marriage. The trust documents explicitly state that any future spouse has no claim whatsoever to the principal or income unless you specifically amend the documents with your own signature and independent legal representation. Catherine slid several pages toward her. She also established a discretionary trust where trustees, not you, control distributions. This adds another layer of protection. Even if someone sued you, they couldn't force distributions because you don't technically control them. This all sounds very complicated. It is. Deliberately so. Your aunt wanted to ensure no one could manipulate or coerce you into giving up these assets. Mr. Pemberton opened another folder. She also left instructions for you to establish your own legal and financial team. She's allocated funds specifically for this purpose. $10 million to hire the best attorneys, accountants, and advisors money can buy. $10 million. For lawyers. The number was incomprehensible. We've prepared a list of recommendations, Catherine continued. Financial advisors with experience managing large portfolios. Tax attorneys who understand international holdings. Security consultants who can protect your privacy. You'll need all of them. Security consultants? When people know you have money, they behave differently. Old friends reappear wanting loans. Distant relatives claim connections. Strangers manufacture problems hoping you'll solve them. Catherine's expression was serious. Your aunt dealt with this her entire life. She wants you prepared. They spent 3 days going through every document, every trust provision, every protection mechanism Eleanor had built. Diane signed papers until her hand cramped. She met with Swiss bankers who explained investment strategies. She toured a vault where Eleanor had stored important documents and family heirlooms. Photographs of relatives Diane had never met, journals documenting Eleanor's business career, and letters. So many letters. She wrote to you every year on your birthday, Mr. Pemberton said softly, handing Diane a box. She never sent them because she wasn't sure they'd be welcome after the family separation. But she wanted you to have them now. Diane opened the first letter, dated the year she turned 5. Eleanor's handwriting was elegant and careful. My dear Diane, today you turned 5 years old. I saw pictures your mother posted. You look so happy, so bright. I wish I could be there to celebrate with you. I wish I could know you. The disagreement that separated our family was never your fault, and I regret every day that pride and stubbornness kept me from reaching out. I hope someday you'll understand that I loved you from a distance, and I've tried to build something that might help you build the life you deserve. Happy birthday, sweetheart. Aunt Eleanor. Tears streamed down Diane's face as she read letter after letter. Eleanor had followed her life through social media, through mutual contacts, through careful distance. She knew about Diane's graduation, her nursing career, her marriage. And in the later letters, Eleanor's concern was evident. I see how he looks at you in photos, or rather how he doesn't look at you. I see how you've grown quieter on social media, less joyful. I pray I'm wrong about what I suspect. But if I'm right, know that you are worth so much more than how you're being treated. You are capable, intelligent, and deserving of genuine love. Never let anyone make you believe otherwise. The final letter was dated 1 month before Eleanor's death. My dear Diane, if you're reading this, I'm gone and you're learning about the inheritance. I hope it doesn't feel like a burden. I hope it feels like possibility. Take this money and build something beautiful. Help others. Create joy. Fall in love with someone who sees your value. Most importantly, never let anyone make you small. You come from women who survived, who thrived, who refused to be broken. That strength is in your blood. Use it. Live fully. Be fearlessly yourself. With all my love, Aunt Eleanor. She watched you your whole life, Mr. Pemberton said gently. She wanted to protect you even after she was gone. On the 4th day, Catherine handed Diane a platinum credit card. This is connected to the discretionary trust. The trustees have authorized you to access funds for reasonable living expenses, security arrangements, and legal fees. There's no preset limit, but expenditures are monitored to ensure your protection. What's reasonable? Whatever you need to establish security and independence. A home, reliable transportation, professional support. Don't go buy a yacht, but also don't deny yourself comfort and safety. That afternoon, Diane sat in her hotel room looking at the credit card, the trust documents, the stack of Eleanor's letters. Her phone buzzed with more texts from blocked numbers. Her husband creating new numbers to get around blocks, sending increasingly desperate and angry messages. She forwarded them all to Patricia and then called her. He's losing his mind, Patricia said with satisfaction. He filed another motion claiming you're fleeing the country with marital assets. The judge denied it within 2 hours. I submitted our counter motion citing his harassment and financial misconduct. We're going to crucify him at the hearing. I'm flying back tomorrow. Everything here is finalized. Perfect. When you land, come straight to my office. We need to prepare your testimony. Patricia paused. Diane, how are you feeling? Really? Overwhelmed. Angry. Grateful. Scared. All of it at once. That's completely normal. You're experiencing massive life changes simultaneously. Just remember, you're not the victim in this story anymore. You're the protagonist. And protagonists win. Diane looked at Eleanor's final letter, still sitting on the desk. You come from women who survived, who thrived, who refused to be broken. Patricia, I want to do something before the hearing. What's that? I want to hire a forensic accountant. I want every financial transaction my husband made during our marriage examined. Every hidden account, every secret credit card, every lie about money. I want a complete picture of what he did. That's going to be expensive and time-consuming. I can afford it now, and I need to know the truth. All of it. Then we'll make it happen. I know the best forensic accountant in the state. Former FBI, now does private consulting. If your husband hid anything, she'll find it. Good. Let's do it. After they ended the call, Diane packed her belongings carefully. The Geneva chapter was closing. Tomorrow she'd fly home to face her husband in court, armed with truth, protected by Eleanor's careful planning, and ready to fight for the life she deserved. Her phone buzzed one more time. A text from a new number. I know you're hiding something. When I find out what it is, you'll regret keeping it from me. You owe me after everything I invested in our marriage. Diane looked at the message for a long moment. Then she typed a response, the first and last communication she'd send him. You invested nothing in our marriage except lies. See you in court. She hit send, then blocked the number. Tomorrow the battle began. And for the first time in her life, Diane had the resources to win. Jennifer Wu was exactly what Diane expected from an ex-FBI forensic accountant. Sharp, efficient, and impossible to intimidate. They met in Patricia's conference room, surrounded by boxes of financial documents Diane had provided. 7 years of marriage, Jennifer said, spreading papers across the table. Joint accounts, individual accounts, credit cards, loan applications, tax returns. Let's see what your husband was really doing. How long will this take? Diane asked. For a surface analysis? A week. For a complete forensic investigation? 4 to 6 weeks. Jennifer pulled out her laptop. But I can tell you right now, something's wrong. Your joint account shows regular deposits from both your salaries, but the withdrawal patterns are irregular. Large amounts disappearing without explanation. He said we needed to save. That money was tight. Money was tight because he was spending it elsewhere. Jennifer highlighted several transactions. Look at this. Every 2 weeks, $500 to $1,000 withdrawn as cash. No receipts, no explanation. Over 7 years, that's easily over $100,000 unaccounted for. Diane felt sick. $100,000? Minimum. And that's just the obvious cash withdrawals. I'll need to track where every dollar went. Jennifer pulled up another screen. Then there are these credit cards I found. 3 cards in his name only, all opened while you were married, all with balances. Total debt, $48,000. $48,000? On what? That's what I'm going to find out. But based on the merchant codes, we're looking at jewelry, hotels, restaurants, luxury retailers. All the hallmarks of an affair. Jennifer's expression was grim. Your husband was funding an entire secret life. Patricia leaned forward. Can we prove the money went to Nicole? If she was the recipient of the gifts or the companion on the trips, yes. It'll take detailed investigation, but we can trace everything. Jennifer turned to Diane. Here's what I need you to do. Get me access to his email accounts, his phone records if possible, and any social media information you have. I also need you to think back through the marriage. Anytime he claimed he was working late, traveling for work, or spending time with friends. Write it all down with dates if you can remember them. Over the next 2 weeks, Diane worked with Jennifer to piece together the financial story of her marriage. It was worse than she'd imagined. He opened a secret savings account 4 years ago, Jennifer reported during one meeting. He's been depositing money there monthly. Current balance, $62,000. $62,000? Diane's voice cracked. We could barely afford rent. He said we couldn't buy a house because we had no savings. You had no savings. He had plenty. Jennifer pulled up bank statements. He also took out a personal loan last year. $15,000. Told the bank it was for home improvements. But you never did any renovations, did you? No. We talked about it, but he always said we couldn't afford it. Because he spent the loan money on Nicole. I traced it to jewelry purchases and a weekend trip to a resort in the Bahamas. He told you he was at a work conference, correct? Diane nodded, too angry to speak. There was no conference. Hotel records show 2 guests in the room. And the resort has photos from their social media showing couples' activities. Jennifer turned her laptop around. There was her husband, smiling on a beach, his arm around Nicole. This was posted by another guest who happened to capture them in the background. The evidence kept mounting. Hidden transactions. Secret accounts. Lies about expenses. Jennifer uncovered a pattern of systematic financial deception spanning their entire marriage. The worst part, Jennifer said during their final meeting, is the timing. Look at this timeline I've constructed. He started planning his exit 18 months ago. That's when the secret account deposits increased. That's when he started hiding assets more aggressively. That's when he began researching divorce attorneys. 18 months. Diane stared at the timeline. We were talking about having kids 18 months ago. He was never going to have kids with you. He was already planning to leave. Jennifer's voice softened. I'm sorry. I know this is painful. But you need to understand the level of calculation involved here. This wasn't a sudden decision or a mistake. This was a long-term plan. Patricia reviewed Jennifer's report with evident satisfaction. This is devastating for him. We can prove premeditation, financial misconduct, and fraud. The judge is going to be furious. There's one more thing, Jennifer said. I found evidence he's been using your identity without authorization. What do you mean? He opened 2 credit cards in your name using your social security number and an address you've never lived at. He's been making minimum payments so you wouldn't notice, but the cards have high balances. Combined, you're listed as responsible for $34,000 in debt you didn't incur. That's identity theft. Yes, which is a crime. Jennifer pushed papers across the table. You can file a police report. You should file a police report. Diane looked at Patricia. Will that affect the divorce? It'll strengthen our case. It shows criminal behavior, not just marital misconduct. Patricia's smile was sharp. Plus, the criminal investigation will freeze his assets during the proceeding. He won't be able to hide money or transfer funds to Nicole. Then let's do it. They went to the police station that afternoon. A detective took Diane's statement, reviewed Jennifer's evidence, and opened a fraud investigation on the spot. Mrs. Patterson, I want you to understand this is serious, the detective said. Identity theft involving a spouse is prosecuted aggressively. If we can prove he knowingly used your identity without consent for personal gain, he's looking at criminal charges. Good, Diane said firmly. The hearing was scheduled for the following week. Patricia prepared Diane thoroughly, running through potential questions, reviewing evidence, ensuring she understood every aspect of their case. He's going to try to paint you as vindictive, Patricia warned. He'll claim you're making false accusations because you're angry about the divorce. Don't take the bait. Stay calm, stick to facts, let the evidence speak. What about the inheritance? We're not mentioning it. It's irrelevant to the divorce proceedings since it came after he filed. If he brings it up, we'll shut it down immediately as separate property outside the court's jurisdiction. The night before the hearing, Diane couldn't sleep. She sat in her apartment, still technically their apartment, for another 3 weeks, reviewing everything. The evidence, the timeline, the proof of his betrayal. Her phone rang at 2 a.m. Unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered. Diane. His voice was quiet, almost gentle. Please don't do this. Don't do what? Defend myself? Expect consequences for your actions? The police came to my office. They questioned me about identity theft. My boss was there. Everyone saw. His facade of calm cracked. Do you have any idea what you've done to my career? Do you have any idea what you did to my life? I made a mistake. I admitted that. But this is vindictive. The criminal complaint, the forensic investigation, trying to destroy me in court. His voice rose. You're being cruel. I'm being honest. There's a difference. Whatever you think you have, whatever evidence you think proves something, we can settle this privately. You don't need to humiliate me in court. You humiliated me when you left me with nothing. When you stole my identity. When you spent years lying to my face. I'll drop the motion about hidden assets. We can finalize the divorce on the original terms. Clean break. We both move on. That was always going to happen. The judge already denied your motion. You have no leverage here. Diane. His voice turned cold. I know about Geneva. I know about the inheritance. And I know that if you acquired that money while we were still legally married, I have a claim to it. Talk to your lawyer about that. I'm sure they'll explain community property law and separate inheritance rules. Especially when the inheritance came after you filed for divorce. I can make this ugly. I can drag this out for years. Is that what you want? I want justice. Whatever that takes. Justice. He laughed bitterly. You want revenge. I want you to face consequences for your choices. That's not revenge. That's accountability. You're going to regret this. When Nicole and I are married, when I'm successful and happy, you're going to realize you had a chance to keep your dignity and you threw it away. Good luck with Nicole. I give it 6 months before she finds someone with more money and status. You're just her stepping stone. Like you told me I was yours. She hung up and immediately forwarded the recording to Patricia with a note. He called at 2 a.m. Threatened to drag out the divorce. Admitted he knows about the inheritance. Also confirmed he's planning to marry Nicole. Patricia's response came instantly, perfect. His threat to delay the divorce shows malicious intent. His admission about the inheritance proves financial motivation. And his wedding plans with Nicole demonstrate the affair was serious and ongoing. This helps us immensely. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we win. But Diane didn't sleep. She watched the sunrise over the city, thinking about Eleanor's letters. About the strength that ran in her blood. About women who refused to be broken. Tomorrow she'd walk into that courtroom not as a victim, but as a woman who knew her worth. Tomorrow her husband would learn that betrayal has consequences. And tomorrow, whether he knew it yet or not, his carefully constructed new life would start to crumble. The courtroom was smaller than Diane expected, less dramatic than television had led her to believe. But the tension was real enough. Her husband sat across the aisle with his attorney, refusing to look at her. Nicole wasn't present. Patricia had successfully argued she wasn't relevant to the proceedings. Judge Rachel Morrison entered, a woman in her late 50s with steel gray hair and a no-nonsense expression. Good morning. We're here for Patterson versus Patterson. Reviewed the motions, counter-motions, and supporting evidence. This should be straightforward, but I understand there are complications. Her husband's attorney stood. Your Honor, my client believes his wife is hiding substantial assets acquired during the marriage. We request full financial disclosure before proceeding with the divorce. Patricia rose smoothly. Your Honor, the petitioner filed for divorce claiming irreconcilable differences and requesting a clean split with no spousal support. He set those terms himself. He withdrew all funds from their joint account without my client's knowledge or consent. He cannot now change his position because he regrets his decisions. What assets is he claiming exist? The judge asked. He's making vague allegations about an inheritance, Your Honor. But even if such an inheritance exists, it's separate property outside this court's jurisdiction. The petitioner filed for divorce, establishing the marriage was over. Any assets acquired after that filing date are separate. The judge looked at Diane's husband's attorney. Do you have evidence these assets were acquired during the marriage? We believe they were, Your Honor. My client has reason to believe his wife traveled to Switzerland to claim an inheritance while they were still legally married. The petitioner filed for divorce before my client traveled anywhere, Patricia countered. The filing establishes the dissolution date. Anything after that is separate property. Additionally, inheritance is specifically excluded from community property in this state. Judge Morrison flipped through documents. Mr. Patterson, you filed for divorce on April 15th. The filing clearly states irreconcilable differences, no spousal support, clean separation of minimal marital assets. Is that correct? Diane's husband stood. Yes, Your Honor, but circumstances have changed. Circumstances have changed, or you've changed your mind about the terms you set? I didn't have complete information when I filed. What information did you lack? The judge's tone was skeptical. I didn't know my wife would suddenly have money. So you want to renegotiate because you believe your wife has resources she didn't have when you decided to divorce her. Is that correct? He hesitated. Yes, Your Honor. That's not how this works. You filed. You set the terms. You established that the marriage was over. You withdrew marital funds without her consent. You cannot now claim you deserve access to assets she may have acquired after you declared the marriage dissolved. Judge Morrison's expression hardened. Motion denied. We'll proceed with the original divorce terms. Patricia stood again. Your Honor, we have additional matters to address. We've uncovered evidence of serious financial misconduct during the marriage. Proceed. For the next hour, Patricia methodically presented Jennifer Wu's findings. Secret accounts, hidden credit cards, cash withdrawals totaling over $100,000, fraudulent loans, identity theft. Jennifer took the stand and walked through her evidence. Bank statements, credit card records, transaction timelines. The judge's expression grew darker with each revelation. Mr. Patterson, Judge Morrison said finally, did you open credit cards in your wife's name without her knowledge? His attorney whispered urgently to him. I may have used our joint information for some accounts. You used your wife's social security number and established accounts at an address she's never lived at. That's not joint information. That's identity theft. I was trying to improve our credit situation. By incurring $34,000 in debt in her name? For jewelry and luxury hotel stays. The judge's voice was ice. Where did this jewelry go, Mr. Patterson? Because I don't see any expensive items listed in the marital property inventory. He said nothing. Let me guess. The jewelry went to someone else. Someone you were having a relationship with while married to the petitioner. Your Honor, my client's personal life isn't relevant, his attorney began. His personal life became relevant when he funded it with marital assets and his wife's stolen identity. Judge Morrison turned to Patricia. What are you requesting? Full restitution for the identity theft. Full responsibility for all debt incurred in my client's name. Full responsibility for all debt incurred on credit cards opened during the affair. Division of the secret savings account. And criminal referral for identity theft and fraud. Your Honor, those are excessive demands. They're reasonable consequences, the judge interrupted. Mr. Patterson systematically deceived his wife, stole her identity, incurred massive debt, and hid assets. Mrs. Patterson is entitled to every penny he took from her, and frankly, she's being generous by not seeking more. She wrote on her legal pad for several long minutes. The courtroom was silent except for the scratch of her pen. Here's my ruling. The divorce is granted on the original terms Mr. Patterson established. Mrs. Patterson receives the security deposit from the apartment. Mr. Patterson is responsible for all debt on credit cards opened during the affair, $23,000. He's responsible for all debt incurred in Mrs. Patterson's name through identity theft, $34,000. The secret savings account of $62,000 is divided equally. Mr. Patterson must pay Mrs. Patterson $31,000 immediately. Patricia nodded with satisfaction, but Diane's husband looked stricken. Additionally, the judge continued, I'm ordering Mr. Patterson to pay Mrs. Patterson's legal fees. She looked at a document, which currently total $18,000 for the forensic accounting and legal representation. And I'm issuing a criminal referral to the district attorney's office for investigation of identity theft and fraud. Your Honor, please. His attorney tried again. I'm not finished. Mr. Patterson is ordered to have no contact with Mrs. Patterson except through legal counsel. Any violation will result in contempt charges. This divorce is final 30 days from today. Court is adjourned. The judge stood and everyone rose automatically. Diane felt her legs shaking but forced herself to remain upright. Her husband turned to look at her finally, his face pale and furious. Patricia put a hand on Diane's arm. Don't react. Don't say anything. Let's go. They walked out of the courtroom into the hallway. Diane made it to a bench before her legs gave out. You did it, Patricia said, sitting beside her. You won. He has to pay me back everything? Everything. Plus your legal fees. Plus he's facing potential criminal charges. Patricia pulled out her phone. The district attorney's office will contact you next week. They'll want your testimony for the fraud investigation. This isn't over for him. What about Nicole? What about her? She's not part of the divorce proceedings. But I guarantee she's going to hear about his financial problems. Women like Nicole don't stick around when the money dries up. Diane's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I hope you're happy. You just destroyed an innocent man's life over a mistake. You're vindictive and cruel. She showed it to Patricia, who smiled grimly. That'll be Nicole. Defending her investment. Want me to respond for you? No. I don't care what she thinks. Diane blocked the number. When do I get the money he owes me? He has 30 days to pay the settlement amount. If he doesn't, we garnish his wages. Given his legal fees and debts, he's going to be financially squeezed for a long time. Patricia stood. Come on. Let's go celebrate your divorce. They went to an upscale restaurant, a place Diane never would have chosen before. Patricia ordered champagne. To freedom, Patricia said, raising her glass. And to holding people accountable for their actions. To Eleanor, Diane added. For giving me the resources to fight back. They drank and Diane felt something shift inside her. The grief and betrayal were still there, but now there was something else. Relief. Vindication. The knowledge that she'd stood up for herself and won. Her phone rang. Mr. Pemberton. Mrs. Patterson, I just heard from Patricia about the court's decision. Congratulations. Thank you. I'm calling because there's something we need to discuss now that the divorce is final. Your aunt left specific instructions that upon completion of your divorce, you should receive access to the full extent of her estate, including properties and business holdings. I thought I already had access? You had access to liquid assets. But opportunity funds. Money specifically set aside for you to invest in ventures of your choosing. How much are we talking about? The opportunity funds alone are $50 million. The real estate is worth approximately $200 million. The business holdings vary in value but collectively represent significant assets. He paused. Mrs. Patterson, you're one of the wealthiest women in the country. It's time to start building the infrastructure to manage that wealth properly. Diane looked at Patricia, who was watching her with a knowing smile. What kind of infrastructure? Legal team, financial advisors, security personnel, property managers. Eleanor left detailed recommendations. She also left a suggestion that you might want to consider starting your own business or foundation. She believed you had the intelligence and compassion to do something meaningful with her legacy. I'm a nurse. I don't know how to run a business. You can learn. Or you can hire people who do. The point is, you have resources now. Use them to build something that matters to you. After the call ended, Diane sat quietly while Patricia finished her champagne. What are you thinking? Patricia asked. I'm thinking about everything my husband said I couldn't do. Couldn't afford a house. Couldn't take vacations. Couldn't go back to school. Couldn't start a business. Couldn't be anything more than what I was. Diane looked up. I want to prove him wrong about everything. Then let's start planning. What do you want your life to look like? Diane thought about Eleanor's letters. About women who refuse to be broken. About turning pain into purpose. I want to help other women. Women going through divorces. Women dealing with financial abuse. Women who need resources to rebuild their lives. A foundation? Maybe. Or a business that provides legal and financial services to women escaping bad situations. Something practical that makes a real difference. Patricia smiled. I love it. And I know exactly who you should talk to about setting it up. But first, you need to get yourself settled. Buy a house. Build your security team. Create stability. Then build your empire. That night, Diane returned to her apartment and started making a list. Everything she wanted to do. Everything she wanted to build. Everything she wanted to become. Her phone buzzed with one final message from her ex-husband's number before she blocked it completely. You haven't won. This isn't over. Diane looked at the message and felt nothing but pity. He still didn't understand. This wasn't about winning or losing. This was about justice. About consequences. About moving forward into a life he'd never be part of again. She deleted the message and opened Eleanor's letters instead, reading them one more time. These were the words that mattered. The encouragement. The love. The reminder that she came from strength. Tomorrow she'd start building her new life. Today she'd simply celebrate being free. The house hunting process revealed just how different Diane's life had become. The real estate agent, recommended by Mr. Pemberton, didn't show her apartments or condos. She showed estates. This property has 6 bedrooms, 8 bathrooms, a home office, a gym, and a guest house, the agent explained as they toured a modern home in an exclusive neighborhood. The security system is state-of-the-art. Gated community, 24-hour patrol, complete privacy. Diane walked through rooms larger than her entire former apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Chef's kitchen. Library with built-in shelves. A pool that looked like it belonged at a resort. It's too much, she said finally. Too much house or too much change? Diane smiled. Both. Let me show you one more property. It's smaller, but I think it might feel more like home. The next house was different. Still beautiful, still far beyond anything Diane had imagined owning, but somehow more welcoming. 4 bedrooms, cozy study, a kitchen that invited cooking rather than display. The backyard had mature trees and a garden space. This one, Diane said. Excellent choice. Let me start the paperwork. Within 2 weeks, Diane owned the house outright. No mortgage. No debt. Just her name on the deed and keys in her hand. I'm terrified I'm going to mess this up. That's what makes you a good leader. You care about getting it right. Margaret closed her laptop. How's the foundation coming along? Diane had also established the Eleanor Roberts Michaels Foundation, dedicated to helping women escape financial abuse. The foundation would provide emergency grants, legal assistance, and financial counseling to women going through difficult divorces. We've hired a director. Applications are being reviewed. We should start distributing grants next month. Diane smiled. Eleanor would love this. Using her money to help women rebuild their lives. She'd be proud of you. 6 months after her divorce, Diane's life was unrecognizable. She lived in a beautiful house. She ran a growing company. She managed a foundation. She had a team of professionals helping her navigate wealth and responsibility. But she still worked nursing shifts twice a month at the hospital. Why? Patricia asked during one of their regular lunches. You don't need the money. Because it keeps me grounded. Because I like helping people directly. Because I don't want to forget where I came from. Diane sipped her coffee. The money changed my circumstances, but I don't want it to change who I am. Your ex-husband could learn from that attitude. How is he doing? Diane hadn't asked in months. Not well. The criminal charges stuck. He pleaded guilty to identity theft for a reduced sentence. Probation, community service, restitution. His job fired him. Nicole left him 3 months ago for someone higher up in the company. He's living in a studio apartment and working in sales at a car dealership. Diane should have felt satisfaction, but she mostly felt nothing. He was a stranger now, someone who'd briefly been in her life and left wreckage behind. His consequences were his own. I heard he's been telling people you destroyed his life, Patricia added. I didn't destroy anything. I just stopped participating in his lies. Diane set down her coffee. Have you heard the phrase, the best revenge is living well? Of course. I prefer, the best revenge is building something better than what you lost. It took 7 years of my life. But those 7 years taught me what I don't want. Now I'm building exactly what I do want. Safeguard Financial launched its beta version 8 months after Diane started the company. The response was overwhelming. Women signed up by the thousands, desperate for tools to monitor their financial situations and protect their identities. The software did exactly what Diane had envisioned. It aggregated accounts from multiple institutions, monitored for unusual activity, provided alerts about credit checks or new accounts, and offered educational resources about financial rights during divorce. We're getting testimonials, the marketing director reported during a team meeting. Women saying our software saved them during their divorces. Women who caught their husbands hiding assets because of our monitoring tools. Women who stopped identity theft before it devastated their credit. Diane read through the testimonials, tears in her eyes. This was why she'd started the company. Not for the money. Not even really for herself anymore. For every woman who'd been in her position, scared and betrayed and unsure how to protect herself. The foundation was equally impactful. They distributed grants to 300 women in the first 6 months, helping them afford divorce attorneys, secure housing, and rebuild their credit. The demand was so high they'd already expanded the staff and increased the budget. "You're making a real difference," Margaret told her. Eleanor would be incredibly proud. Diane thought about that often. About Eleanor watching her life from a distance, worried but unable to help directly, so she built a safety net instead. And now Diane was using that safety net to help others. One evening, Diane sat in her home office reviewing the company's quarterly reports. Safeguard Financial was growing faster than projected. The foundation was helping more women than they'd anticipated. Her investment portfolio was performing well under Sarah's careful management. She'd built something substantial, something meaningful, something that would outlast her and continue helping women long after she was gone. Her phone rang. A number she didn't recognize, but local. "Hello? Diane Patterson?" "Yes. My name is Thomas Chin. I'm calling from the Professional Women's Leadership Foundation. We're hosting our annual benefit next month, and we'd like to invite you as our keynote speaker." "Keynote speaker? Why me?" "Your story is inspiring. Single woman, inherited wealth, immediately started a company and foundation to help other women. You're exactly the kind of leader we want to highlight." Diane hesitated. Public speaking terrified her. But this was part of building something bigger than herself. Part of making sure other women knew they could survive and thrive after betrayal. "I'd be honored," she said. After the call ended, Diane walked to the window of her office, looking out at the garden she'd planted. Roses were blooming. The trees she'd carefully selected provided shade and beauty. This was her home, her space, her life. A year ago, she'd been sitting in a small apartment, watching her husband pack his bags, believing her life was ending. Now she stood in her own home, running a successful company, helping hundreds of women, building a legacy that mattered. Her ex-husband had been wrong about everything. She didn't need him. She'd never needed him. She'd needed herself, her strength, her resilience, her refusal to be broken. And now she was just getting started. The keynote speech was terrifying and exhilarating. Diane stood in front of 500 women in business, sharing her story with careful honesty. She didn't mention her ex-husband by name, but she didn't hide what he'd done either. "I thought my worth was tied to my marriage," she told the audience. "I thought being abandoned meant I'd failed. But failure isn't being left. Failure is staying small because someone else told you that's all you deserve." The standing ovation lasted 3 minutes. Afterward, dozens of women approached her with their own stories of betrayal and recovery. Some asked about Safeguard Financial. Others wanted information about the foundation. All of them thanked her for speaking truth about the pain of financial abuse. That night, her phone started ringing with interview requests. Business magazines wanted her story. Tech publications wanted to know about Safeguard's development. Women's organizations wanted her as a speaker for their events. "You're becoming a public figure," Patricia warned during one of their lunches. "Be prepared for attention. Not all of it will be positive." "What do you mean?" "Your success is going to bother people. Especially certain people who thought you'd fail without them." Patricia sipped her wine. "Speaking of which, I heard something interesting. Your ex-husband tried to get a job at a financial services company last month. They ran a background check and found his criminal conviction for identity theft. He didn't get the job. That's standard background check procedure." "True. But here's the interesting part. He went on social media ranting about how his ex-wife destroyed his career, how you're vindictive and cruel, how you used your money to blacklist him from the industry. I've never spoken about him publicly. I've never even said his name in interviews." "I know. But he's convinced you're behind his problems. As if facing consequences for his own actions is somehow your fault." Patricia leaned forward. "Diane, I'm telling you this because you need to be aware. He's becoming increasingly desperate and angry. Make sure your security team knows about his social media posts." Diane contacted Michelle Torres immediately. Michelle reviewed the posts with a serious expression. "He's not making direct threats, but the tone is concerning, blaming you for his problems. suggesting you don't deserve your success. Michelle made notes. We're going to increase monitoring. If his posts escalate or if he attempts any contact, we'll involve law enforcement. Do you think he's dangerous? I think he's a man whose ego was shattered and who's looking for someone to blame. That can be dangerous. Michelle looked up. But you're protected. Trust the systems we've put in place. Life continued its forward momentum. Safeguard Financial prepared for a major marketing campaign. The foundation expanded to serve women in 10 states. Diane was featured in a business magazine cover story titled, From Betrayal to Billions: How One Woman Turned Heartbreak into a Tech Empire. The article detailed her story, her company, and her mission. It mentioned her divorce only briefly, never naming her ex-husband but making clear she'd experienced financial abuse during her marriage. The article went viral. Safeguard Financial's user base tripled in 2 weeks. The foundation received donations from women across the country. Diane's social media following exploded, and her ex-husband's posts became more frequent and more bitter. She's lying about her success, one post read. She inherited everything. She didn't build anything. She just got lucky and now acts like she's some kind of victim. She destroyed my life with false accusations, another claimed. Turned everyone against me. Prevented me from getting jobs. All because I made one mistake in our marriage. Women like her play the victim while using their money to destroy men who dare to move on with their lives. Michelle showed Diane the posts during their weekly security briefing. He's creating a narrative where you're the villain and he's the innocent victim. It's concerning because he's building an audience. Other men who feel victimized by their divorces are engaging with his posts, validating his anger. What can we do? Legally? Nothing unless he makes specific threats. But we can document everything. And we can make sure you're protected if his online anger translates to real-world action. Diane tried to focus on her work and ignore the social media noise. But it was harder than she'd expected. Seeing her story twisted, seeing herself portrayed as vindictive when all she'd done was hold him accountable, stung more than she wanted to admit. Then the district attorney's office called. Mrs. Patterson, this is Assistant District Attorney Jennifer Walsh. I'm calling about the identity theft case involving your ex-husband. I thought that was resolved. He pleaded guilty. He did. But we're reopening the investigation based on new information. It appears the identity theft was more extensive than originally reported. Diane sat down slowly. What do you mean? We've discovered he opened bank accounts in your name at multiple institutions. He took out a personal loan using your information. He even attempted to purchase a car using your credit. Jennifer's voice was grim. The original charges covered only the credit cards we knew about. This is a much larger fraud. How much larger? He obtained approximately $90,000 through various forms of identity fraud. He then moved most of that money into accounts we haven't been able to fully trace yet. Jennifer paused. Mrs. Patterson, we believe he was systematically stealing your identity over several years to fund his affair and his planned exit from the marriage. $90,000? Minimum. We're still investigating. He may face additional charges. More importantly, some of this activity occurred after your divorce was finalized, which means he continued committing identity theft even after being caught. After the divorce? Why would he do that? Our theory? He was angry about the judgment against him and wanted to hurt you financially. He thought he could damage your credit without being caught again. Jennifer sighed. He was wrong. We caught it quickly. But his willingness to continue criminal behavior even after conviction shows a pattern of thinking he's above consequences. What happens now? We're filing additional charges. More serious charges this time. He could face jail time rather than just probation. After the call, Diane sat in her office shaking. He'd continued. Even after being caught, even after losing everything, he'd continued trying to hurt her. She called Patricia. I know, Patricia said immediately. The DA's office contacted me too. This is serious, Diane. His obsession with you is escalating. I haven't done anything to him. I haven't even thought about him in months. You don't have to do anything. Your existence is enough. Your success is enough. Every article about your company, every speech you give, every woman you help, it all reminds him that you didn't need him, that you're thriving without him, that his grand plan to trade up to a better life failed spectacularly while you built something real. So this is my fault for succeeding? Of course not. But that's how he sees it. You were supposed to fail. You were supposed to struggle and regret not fighting harder to keep him. Instead, you became incredibly successful, and that destroys his entire narrative about himself. What do I do? Nothing. You do nothing. You let the legal system handle it. You let security monitor him. And you keep building your empire. Patricia's voice softened. Diane, you've done everything right. You protected yourself legally. This is not your responsibility to fix. But it was hard to feel that way when Diane's phone rang at midnight with unknown numbers. When packages arrived at her office addressed to her with no return address. When her social media accounts received dozens of messages from fake profiles saying horrible things. Michelle's team intercepted everything. They traced the IP addresses of the fake accounts back to her ex-husband. They documented the packages, which contained nothing dangerous, just junk meant to unsettle her. They recorded every phone call from blocked numbers. He's harassing you, Michelle said bluntly. We have enough evidence to file charges. Do you want to press charges? Will it stop him? A restraining order with criminal teeth might, especially combined with the new identity theft charges. The prosecutor could argue this is part of a pattern of stalking and harassment. Diane thought about what Patricia had. The legal response was swift. Her ex-husband was arrested at his apartment and charged with continued identity theft, harassment, and stalking. His bail was set high because of his prior conviction. He spent 3 days in jail before his family posted bond. Diane didn't feel victorious. She felt exhausted. She was in her office when Sarah, her financial advisor, called with unexpected news. I just got off the phone with a venture capital firm. They want to invest in Safeguard Financial. They're offering $20 million for 10% equity. What? Why? Because your company is successful in solving a real problem. Your user base is growing exponentially. Your retention rates are exceptional. You're making money and making a difference. Sarah laughed. Diane, they're valuing your company at $200 million. You built something worth $200 million in under a year. Diane sat back in her chair, stunned. When she'd started Safeguard, she'd been thinking about helping women, not about valuation or investment. What should I do? That depends. Do you want to take the investment and use it to scale faster? Or do you want to maintain full control and grow organically? I need to think about it. But before she could think, her phone rang again. This time it was Jennifer Walsh from the DA's office. Mrs. Patterson, I wanted to give you a heads up. Your ex-husband's arraignment is tomorrow. He's planning to plead not guilty and claim you've been harassing him. That's absurd. I haven't contacted him at all. I know. We have documentation proving he's the one doing all the contacting. But his attorney is going to try to paint this as a vindictive ex-wife using her wealth to persecute him. Will that work? Not with the evidence we have. But it'll be ugly. Are you prepared for that? I don't know, Diane admitted. I just want this to be over. It will be. One way or another, this ends soon. Either he accepts a plea deal and faces serious consequences, or we go to trial and he faces even more serious consequences. Either way, he's done. That night, Diane sat in her beautiful home, surrounded by success and security, and felt the weight of everything pressing down. She'd done everything right. She'd protected herself. She'd built something meaningful. She'd helped hundreds of women. But her ex-husband still consumed energy she didn't want to give him. His anger still found ways to intrude on her peace. She opened Eleanor's letters and read the final one again. Take this money and build something beautiful. Help others. Create joy. Fall in love with someone who sees your value. Most importantly, never let anyone make you small. Diane realized she'd done all of that except one thing. She hadn't fallen in love again. She'd been so focused on building and protecting and growing that she'd closed herself off to that possibility. Not because she was afraid of love, but because she'd been so busy proving she didn't need anyone that she'd forgotten it was okay to want someone. She sent a text to Margaret. Let's talk about the investment offer. I want to scale Safeguard as fast as possible. The more women we can help, the better. Another text to Patricia. When this legal situation is over, I want to do something for myself. Something that has nothing to do with business or revenge or proving anything. Something just for joy. And one final text to herself, a note to remember. You built something beautiful. Now build a beautiful life to go with it. Tomorrow, her ex-husband would stand in court and try to claim victimhood. Tomorrow, his consequences would continue to unfold. But tomorrow, Diane would also sign a deal to scale her company. Would speak at another event helping women. Would continue building something that mattered. His consequences were his to face. Her life was hers to live. And she was just getting started with the living part. The trial was mercifully brief. Her ex-husband's attorney tried to paint him as a victim of a vindictive ex-wife, but the evidence was overwhelming. Bank records, IP addresses, recorded phone calls, security footage of him mailing packages to Diane's office. The jury deliberated for 90 minutes before returning a guilty verdict on all counts: continued identity theft, harassment, stalking, and violation of probation from his previous conviction. Judge Morrison, the same judge who'd handled the divorce, showed no mercy during sentencing. Mr. Patterson, you had every opportunity to accept responsibility and move forward with your life. Instead, you chose to blame your ex-wife for the natural consequences of your own criminal behavior. You harassed her. You stalked her. You continued committing identity theft even after being caught and convicted. She looked at him with open disgust. Your actions demonstrate a complete lack of remorse or accountability. I'm sentencing you to 18 months in prison, followed by 3 years of supervised probation. You will have no contact with Mrs. Patterson directly or indirectly. You will undergo mandatory counseling for controlling behaviors. And you will pay full restitution for all financial damages. He stood in silence, his face pale, as bailiffs led him away. Diane watched him go and felt nothing. Not satisfaction. Not vindication. Just the quiet relief of a chapter finally closing. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited with cameras and questions. Michelle's team created a path through them, but one reporter's question stopped Diane short. Mrs. Patterson, do you feel like you got revenge? Diane turned to look at the reporter, a young woman with earnest eyes. I didn't want revenge, Diane said clearly. I wanted justice. There's a difference. Revenge is about hurting someone. Justice is about holding them accountable. I built a life. He made choices. Those choices had consequences. What's next for you? I'm going to keep building. Keep helping women. Keep growing Safeguard Financial and the foundation. And I'm going to stop letting my past define my future. That became her focus. Safeguard Financial accepted the investment and immediately began scaling. They hired 50 new employees. They expanded to all 50 states. They added features based on user feedback: budgeting tools, financial education modules, connections to legal resources. Within 6 months, they had 2 million users. Within a year, 5 million. The company was valued at over $1 billion, making Diane a billionaire independent of her inheritance. But the numbers mattered less than the impact. Safeguard prevented thousands of cases of identity theft, helped women discover hidden accounts, provided education about financial rights, created a community of women supporting each other through difficult transitions. The foundation was equally successful. They distributed grants to over 3,000 women, helping them afford divorce attorneys, secure safe housing, and rebuild their credit. They'd partnered with legal aid organizations across the country. They'd created a network of support that extended far beyond money. Diane spoke at conferences and events, sharing her story and encouraging other women to protect themselves. She met judges, lawmakers, and advocates working to strengthen financial protections for people going through divorce. And slowly, carefully, she started opening herself to life beyond work. She went back to nursing part-time, not because she needed the money, but because caring for people directly grounded her. She joined a book club with other women in her neighborhood. She took up painting, discovering a love for abstract art that let her express feelings she couldn't always put into words. One evening, she attended a charity gala for a children's hospital. She wasn't speaking or presenting, just attending as a donor. The lack of pressure was refreshing. At the bar, she ordered a glass of wine and found herself standing next to a man with kind eyes and a genuine smile. "Are you enjoying the event?" he asked. "I am. It's nice to support something important without being on stage." Diane smiled. "I'm Diane. Graham. Graham Foster." He gestured to the crowd. "I'm a pediatric surgeon here. These galas are exhausting, but they fund important research, so I smile and make small talk." "You don't like small talk?" "I prefer real conversations. But those are hard to find at events like this." They ended up talking for 2 hours. About medicine. About the challenges of helping people. About finding meaning in work. Graham didn't ask about her company or her money. He talked about hiking trails and his terrible attempts at learning guitar. He made her laugh. When the event ended, he asked for her number. "I'd like to take you to dinner," he said. "Not at a fancy restaurant with photographers. Just dinner. Real food, real conversation." "I'd like that." Their first date was at a small Italian restaurant. No paparazzi. No pretense. Just two people sharing pasta and stories. Graham knew who she was. Her story had been too public to miss. But he treated her like a woman he wanted to know, not a wealthy entrepreneur he wanted to impress. Tell me about nursing, he said. Why do you still work in the hospital when you could do anything? Because it reminds me who I am. When I'm at the hospital, I'm not a CEO or a public figure. I'm just someone helping people who are sick or scared. Diane paused. My company helps women financially. The foundation provides resources. But nursing lets me help people directly, immediately. There's something powerful about that. I understand completely. That's why I still do surgeries even though I could just do research and consulting. The direct impact matters. They dated for 3 months before Diane told him everything. Not the public version of her story, but the private truth. The pain of betrayal. The fear during the divorce. The anger when her ex-husband wouldn't let go. The exhaustion of constant vigilance. Graham listened without interruption. Then he took her hand. Thank you for trusting me with that. I can't imagine how hard it was. He paused. I need to tell you something too. I was married before. My wife died of cancer 5 years ago. We'd been together since college. Losing her broke something in me that I'm still working to repair. I'm so sorry. The point is, we all have past pain. We all have things that shaped us. But at some point, we have to decide if we're going to let that pain define our future or if we're going to build something new. He looked at her directly. I think you're building something beautiful. I'd like to be part of that if you'll let me. She did let him. Slowly, carefully testing the foundation before putting weight on it. Graham was patient. He understood her need for security and independence. He never pushed, never demanded, never tried to control. He met her team, Patricia, Margaret, Sarah, Michelle. They all approved. He's genuine, Patricia said after Graham left one dinner. He doesn't want anything from you except your company. That's exactly what makes me nervous, Diane admitted. What if I'm wrong again? What if I'm missing something? You're not wrong. And even if you were, you're not the same woman who got hurt before. You're stronger. You know your worth. You have resources and protections. Patricia smiled. But more importantly, you have instincts you're learning to trust. What do your instincts say about Graham? Diane thought about it. They say he's safe. That he's real. That he sees me, not my money or my story. Then trust that. 1 year after her divorce was finalized, Safeguard Financial went public. The IPO was massively successful. Diane's personal wealth increased to over $2 billion. She was featured in business magazines, on financial news programs, and in case studies about successful entrepreneurship. But the moment that mattered most was quieter. She stood in the foundation's new headquarters, watching as staff members processed grant applications. Women across the country were being helped. Legal fees paid. Housing secured. Lives rebuilt. Margaret stood beside her. You did this. You took the worst thing that happened to you and turned it into something that helps thousands of women. Eleanor did this. She gave me the resources. Eleanor gave you money. You gave it purpose. Margaret put her hand on Diane's shoulder. That's the difference between having wealth and using wealth wisely. Anyone can have money. You're changing lives. That evening, Graham picked her up for dinner. Nothing fancy. Just a restaurant they both liked with good food and quiet corners. I want to tell you something, Graham said after they'd ordered. I'm falling in love with you. Diane's breath caught. Graham? You don't have to say anything back. I just wanted you to know. I love your intelligence, your compassion, the way you care about people, the way you turn pain into purpose. He reached across the table for her hand. I love how you're still figuring out who you are with all this change. I love that you're not perfect or finished. I love the whole complicated, brilliant, real person you are. Tears filled Diane's eyes. I'm scared. I know. But I'm not going anywhere. Take your time. Trust me slowly. I'll wait. I think. Diane took a shaky breath. I think I'm falling in love with you too. It terrifies me. But I think it's real. He smiled, and something warm and hopeful opened in Diane's chest. Not the desperate need she'd felt in her first marriage. Not the fear of being alone. Just genuine affection for a man who saw her completely and chose to stay. They left the restaurant and walked through the city talking about everything and nothing. About her company's expansion plans. About his upcoming surgery schedule. About a trip they might take together to a place neither had been. Normal things. Happy things. The kind of conversation between two people building something together rather than one person demanding and another giving. When Graham dropped her off at her house, he kissed her gently. "Thank you for trusting me with your heart," he said. "I promise to be careful with it. Thank you for seeing me. Not the money or the story. Just me. That's the only you I'm interested in." Diane went inside her beautiful home and sat in her reading nook, looking out at the garden. Her phone buzzed with work emails, updates from the foundation, messages from team members. All the noise of a successful, busy, meaningful life. But for the first time in a long time, the noise felt like music instead of chaos. She'd built something beautiful from something broken. She turned betrayal into purpose. And now, carefully, she was learning to trust again, to love again, to believe in possibilities instead of just protecting against pain. Eleanor had been right. This money was for building the life she deserved. And finally, Diane understood that she deserved everything. Success, safety, love, joy, all of it. The past had happened. The pain had been real. But the future was hers to create. And she was creating something beautiful. 1 year later, Diane stood on a stage in front of 3,000 women at the National Women's Empowerment Conference. The ballroom was enormous, glittering with lights and possibility. She wasn't nervous anymore. She'd learned to own her story instead of hiding from it. 5 years ago, she began, her voice clear and strong, "My husband walked out on me the day he got a promotion. He told me I didn't fit his new life. He drained our bank account, blocked my number, and filed for divorce. He left me with nothing and expected me to disappear quietly." The audience was silent, attentive. 3 days later, I got a phone call that changed my life. But the call wasn't the real change. The inheritance gave me resources, yes. But the real change was deciding I was worth fighting for, worth protecting, worth building a life for. She talked about Safeguard Financial, now with over 8 million users across 15 countries. About the foundation, which had helped over 10,000 women rebuild their lives after financial abuse. About the difference between revenge and justice, between reacting to pain and transforming it. Women ask me all the time if I ever see my ex-husband, if I think about him, if I feel like I won. Diane paused. The truth is, I barely think about him at all anymore. He's not the villain in my story. He's just the catalyst that forced me to become who I was always meant to be. The applause was thunderous. After the speech, dozens of women lined up to talk to her. Some asked advice about protecting themselves financially. A few simply thanked her for proving that life could be beautiful after devastating loss. Graham waited for her at the edge of the crowd, patient and proud. They'd been together for almost 2 years now. He proposed 3 months ago, but they were taking their time, planning the wedding. No rush, no pressure. Just two people building a life together intentionally and carefully. "You were incredible," he said when she finally reached him. "I used to be terrified of public speaking. Now it feels like telling a story that might help someone." That's because it is helping someone. Probably hundreds of someone's. They drove home together, talking about the event, about the week ahead, about the vacation they were planning to Greece. Normal, happy conversation between people who'd chosen each other freely and fully. At home, Diane changed into comfortable clothes and curled up in her reading nook with Graham beside her. The garden outside was blooming, roses and hydrangeas and the lavender she planted last spring. Her phone buzzed with a news alert. She almost ignored it, but the headline caught her eye. Former Stellar Financial employee released after serving sentence for identity theft and stalking. Her ex-husband. Released from prison after 18 months, out on parole. Graham saw her expression. "What is it?" "He's out. Do you want me to call security? Update the protocols?" "No. He's not my problem anymore. He made his choices, served his time, and now he gets to live with the consequences." Diane set down her phone. "I hope he finds a way to build a decent life. But it's not my responsibility to care about that. You're remarkably generous. I'm remarkably free. Free of anger. Free of the need to punish him. Free to just live." She leaned against Graham. "That's the real victory. Not that he's in prison or that I'm wealthy, but that I can hear his name and feel nothing but mild indifference." A week later, Diane was at the hospital working a nursing shift when she saw him. He was in the emergency room, sitting in the waiting area with a broken arm. He looked older, tired, diminished. When he saw her, his face went through a range of emotions: surprise, embarrassment, anger, resignation. Diane approached him professionally. "Do you need a doctor?" "I need someone to set my arm. I slipped on ice." His voice was quiet, defeated. "I'll let the attending know you're here." She started to walk away. "Diane." He said her name hesitantly, like he wasn't sure he had permission. She turned back. I, I saw you on the news. Your company. The things you're doing. He looked down at his broken arm. You built something incredible. Thank you. I'm sorry. For everything. I know that doesn't mean anything now, but I am sorry. Diane studied him for a moment. She could see the truth in his eyes. He genuinely regretted his choices. Not because of the consequences, though those were clearly weighing on him, but because he'd actually, finally, understood what he'd destroyed and who he'd hurt. I accept your apology, she said simply. I hope you find a way to build a better life. Better than what I had with you? That's not possible. Better than the life you chose after me. That's definitely possible. But you have to want it. You have to do the work. She walked away then back to her duties. She didn't tell him about Graham or the wedding plans. Didn't mention the foundation's expansion or Safeguard's international success. He didn't need to know any of that. Later, when the attending asked about her history with the patient, Diane simply said, "We used to be married. It ended badly. But it's in the past." The doctor studied her face. "Are you okay treating him?" "I'm not treating him." "You are." "I'm just doing my job." Diane smiled. "I'm completely fine." And she was. That evening, she told Graham about the encounter. "How did it feel?" he asked. "Like seeing someone I used to know a long time ago. Not quite a stranger, but not someone who matters to my life now." Diane thought about it. "I think that's what healing actually looks like. Not dramatic confrontation or vindictive triumph. Just indifference. Peaceful indifference. You're remarkable. I'm just someone who decided to stop letting my past write my future." The months continued their gentle progression. Safeguard Financial launched a new feature connecting users with vetted divorce attorneys. The foundation partnered with major banks to provide financial education to women in difficult situations. Diane hired a CEO to run the day-to-day operations of Safeguard so she could focus on strategy and advocacy work. She and Graham got married in a small ceremony surrounded by close friends and the team that had helped her build her new life. Patricia was her maid of honor. Margaret gave a toast about transformation and resilience. Michelle's security team kept reporters away so Diane could have a private, joyful day. Eleanor would have loved it. Diane wore a pendant that had belonged to her aunt, a small reminder that she came from women who survived and thrived. On their honeymoon in Greece, walking through ancient ruins hand in hand with Graham, Diane thought about her journey. 5 years from divorce to this moment. From devastation to success. From betrayal to genuine love. "What are you thinking about?" Graham asked. "About how sometimes the worst things that happen to us force us to become who we were always meant to be. About how pain can be transformed into purpose if we choose to do the work. No regrets. About my first marriage? Only that I didn't see the truth sooner. But I needed those years to become this person. I needed the pain to understand my strength." She squeezed his hand. "I don't regret anything that led me here." They stood looking at the Mediterranean Sea, ancient stones beneath their feet, and Diane felt complete peace. Back home, the work continued. Safeguard helped its 10 millionth user. The foundation distributed its 5,000th grant. Diane was invited to testify before Congress about financial protections for people going through divorce. She met with lawmakers, sharing her story and advocating for stronger identity theft laws. One afternoon, Patricia called with unexpected news. "Remember how your ex claimed you destroyed his life?" "Vaguely. I try not to think about his drama." "Well, he just got engaged. To a woman he met in his court-mandated counseling. She's a therapist. Apparently she sees his potential or whatever." Patricia laughed. "The point is he's moved on. He's building a life. And he's finally stopped blaming you for his problems. Good for him." "Genuinely." "You mean that?" "I do. I hope he's happy. I hope he learned something. I hope his fiancée never experiences what I went through." Diane meant every word. "I don't need him to suffer. I just needed him to stop trying to hurt me. You're a better person than I am. I'm just someone who realized that holding on to anger hurts me more than it hurts anyone else. Letting go wasn't about him. It was about me choosing peace." That peace deepened as years passed. Safeguard Financial became the leading financial security platform for women worldwide. The foundation expanded to 25 states and began offering services to men experiencing financial abuse as well, because the mission was about protection, not gender. Diane gave keynote speeches, wrote a book about financial empowerment, and continued working nursing shifts because connecting with people directly mattered to her soul. She and Graham built a life filled with work they believed in, people they loved, and quiet moments of genuine joy. They traveled. They volunteered. They supported causes that mattered. They created a home filled with laughter and books and the kind of comfortable silence that comes from deep trust. One evening, 5 years after her divorce, Diane sat in her home office going through mail. Most of it was routine, bills, invitations, business correspondence. But one envelope stood out. Handwritten. Local postmark. No return address. Inside was a single card with a simple message. I saw you speak at the Women's Leadership Conference. You talked about turning pain into purpose. You probably don't remember, but you signed my conference program and wrote, "You are stronger than you know." I was in the middle of a terrible divorce. My husband had drained our accounts and I felt helpless. Your story gave me hope. I used Safeguard to document his financial abuse. I got a good lawyer. I fought for myself. Today, my divorce was finalized. I won. I'm going to be okay. I wanted you to know that you saved my life by showing me I could save myself. Thank a woman you'll never meet but who will never forget you. Diane read the card 3 times, tears streaming down her face. This was what mattered. Not the wealth or the success or the public recognition. But this, one woman helping another woman believe in her own strength. She kept the card in her desk drawer, pulling it out whenever she felt tired or overwhelmed or questioned whether any of this made a difference. It made a difference. Every day. To women she'd never meet. To women who needed to know that survival was possible. That rebuilding was possible. That joy after devastation was possible. Eleanor had given her the resources. Betrayal had given her the mission. But Diane had done the work of transforming both into something meaningful. 10 years after that terrible day when her husband packed his bags and walked out, Diane stood in the same ballroom where she'd given her first major speech. But this time, she was presenting the Eleanor Roberts Michaels Foundation's annual award for innovation in financial advocacy. The recipient was a young woman who'd created an app connecting domestic abuse survivors with emergency financial resources. The woman reminded Diane of herself, nervous but determined, hurt but transforming that hurt into purpose. Your work matters, Diane told her as she presented the award. Every woman you help, every resource you provide, every system you disrupt to protect people. All of it matters. Keep going. The young woman hugged her, crying. You inspired me. You showed me it was possible. You inspired yourself. You're the one doing the work. After the event, Diane and Graham walked to their car through warm evening air. She was 54 now. Her company was valued at over $5 billion. Her foundation had helped over 50,000 women. Her book had sold 2 million copies. But the numbers didn't define her. The work did. The purpose did. The knowledge that she'd taken the worst thing that ever happened to her and transformed it into the best thing she'd ever done. Happy? Graham asked, taking her hand. Completely. No regrets. Only that I didn't find myself sooner. But maybe I needed the journey to become who I am. They drove home to their beautiful house with its blooming garden and warm light in the windows. Home to the life they'd built together. Home to peace and purpose and the kind of happiness that comes from choosing yourself. His phone buzzed one final time that evening. A message from an unknown number. I just want you to know I think about what I lost every day. Seeing your success, knowing what we could have had together. It haunts me. I hope you're happy, but I hope you remember what you gave up too. Her ex-husband. One final attempt at relevance in her life. Diane read it once, then deleted it without responding. She didn't block the number. She didn't feel anger or satisfaction or anything at all. She simply set down her phone and returned to her evening, to her life, to the beautiful reality she'd built from broken pieces. His message didn't deserve space in her thoughts. His regret didn't deserve acknowledgement. His haunting wasn't her problem. She'd moved on. Fully. Completely. Absolutely. And that indifference, that peace, that complete and total freedom from caring what he thought or felt, was the real victory. Not revenge. Not even justice, really. Just freedom. To be happy. To be whole. To be exactly